The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Humans leave their mark on this planet every day. Tonight, 3 ways to think about that. First, how a green revolution in Canadian agriculture could increase food production as it fights climate change. Then, what a little lake outside Milton, Ontario might mean for defining a new geological epoch, the Anthropocene. And why a warming climate is breathing life into so-called zombie fires and what to do about them. It's Thursday, January 12th, and that's all ahead on the agenda. Canada already plays a critical role in meeting global demand for food. As the climate crisis plays out and the world's population grows, that need is expected to ramp up as well. A new report says that presents a real opportunity. Not only could Canada expand its markets, but we can also do it while boosting agricultural yields and reducing the carbon footprint of farming. John Stackhouse is one of the authors of that report, a joint effort, incidentally, by RBC, the BCG Centre for Canada's Future, and the Errol Food Institute at the University of Guelph. John's a senior VP in the office of the CEO at RBC, and he joins us now. It's great to have you back in that chair.
Great to see you, Steve.
Okay, the next green revolution. That is a reference to what?
Well, some of the viewers may remember the first green revolution in the 1950s and 60s when agriculture was transformed globally and we developed all sorts of technologies that allowed us to produce a lot more food, and that has helped feed the world, staved off a lot of starvation in many parts of the world. We need an equal green revolution this time, but the green is on climate. Canadians probably don't appreciate that roughly 10% of our national emissions come from agriculture. When you factor in the whole supply chain, what it takes for fertilizer, what it takes from diesel to get that food to your door, it can run up to 20%. So if we're going to get to net zero, we've got to address agricultural emissions. But there's a bonus to this as well, because agriculture can be a carbon sink. We can absorb greenhouse gas emissions in the soil. And we have a soil base in this country that is almost unequaled in the world. And we've got to put that to work as a national asset and reward farmers as the land stewards for capturing that carbon. That's going to be critical for us to get to net zero. Now, all of this was true 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. What has changed profoundly is what happened in the world last year with the Ukraine war, which in our view was not a one-off. We are going to continue to see geopolitical and geoeconomic disruptions that will affect commodities trades, that will affect the price of oil and gas, the price of food for many years to come. And that creates an additional imperative for Canada as a major exporter of food to the world to produce a lot more food, to produce it more sustainably, and to get it to the parts of the world that are not going to be able to rely on producers like Russia, as they might have in years past.
Okay, a ton to unpack there, so let's start to do that. If the mission is to reduce that 10 or 20% to zero, how well are we doing at that mission so far?
We're, like in a lot of sectors, kind of moving along very slowly, and we need to accelerate that if we're going to get those 100 or so megatons out of our carbon footprint of 720 down to 50, down to zero. Now, fortunately, we have the technologies. We know what to do, but we've got to scale it. We have the technologies to capture more carbon in the soil. We have the technologies to manage livestock better, and we can get into methane emissions. But Canada can be a leader in this. So it's not just about producing more food with fewer emissions for the world. That's kind of job one here. There's also an opportunity to develop the technologies and create kind of a Silicon Valley of agriculture technology, or ag tech as it's called, in places like Guelph, in places like Calgary, and export these technologies as the rest of the world tries to figure out also how to produce more food with fewer emissions.
As you look at the amount of food that we are producing today and the need for whatever amount that is, take us 30 years down the road, take us almost the year 2050. What's the difference going to be between what we're doing today and what we'll need in 2050?
We're not going to be producing radically different foods. We're not talking about Franken foods, for instance. We'll still continue to produce a lot of canola, a lot of beef, a lot of dairy products, but we'll be producing them differently and selling them to different markets in the world. You don't even need to go 25 years out. We estimated RBC that Canada will need to export 25% more food by the year 2030. So that's a massive increase in exports. That's actually a benefit for all of Canada, because that helps the Canadian dollar, helps our balance of payments and balance of trade in the world. So agriculture is and will continue to be a key economic engine of the country. But we need to bring this climate smart thinking to all parts of agriculture. How we produce eggs, how we produce tomatoes is not only going to be important to Canada's footprint. We're seeing increasing demand in other markets, and that includes the United States, for climate smart food products. And again, an opportunity for Canada to be at the forefront of this revolution.
I wonder how tough it is to get people to start thinking more climate smart when the fact of the matter is, what is it now? 80 to 90% of us live in cities. I'm convinced a lot of people watching this or listening to this have never been to a farm in their lives, and yet you're looking for transformation in a sector we don't think that much about. Discuss.
Absolutely. We take food for granted, and that's at our peril. It's amazing to go out to farms now. They are the most sophisticated tech operations I get to see anywhere. You go to a dairy farm, and the first thing you will see is robots. I spent a lot of time on dairy farms in southwestern Ontario, and you sit with the farmers in their living room as they control the robots on their TV in the living room, sort of flipping from Netflix to this, and then they go out to the barn and do the hard work of farmers. But it is very much a tech-based, data-driven operation now. So that's a great Canadian advantage, because we can be tech leaders in the world. That can also be a consumer advantage, because that can drive down prices. That kind of tech innovation is what drives down prices in all sectors, as we know. But we as consumers need to appreciate all that goes into the production of food, and we're all feeling and seeing the increases in food prices, and that will moderate, we believe. But it's an indication of some of the challenges out there. We're not going to make this transition easily, and we're not going to make it easily if we don't invest more in farmers. We have to think collectively about the economics of farming. It's really still very tough to make a living as a farmer, even if you've got thousands of hectares. It's tough to get by. You might have a commodity spike one year, but it's going to come down the next year, and you still have all your bills to pay. So as a country, we're looking for ways and policy ideas to invest more in farmers, particularly to reward them for that stewarding of the land that I mentioned earlier. Farmers, we believe, can capture 30 to 40 megatons of carbon. That's almost on par with what the oil sands produces. So it comes out of the oil sands, go back into soil. How do we incentivize farmers, reward them for capturing that soil?
Who's the we that needs to incentivize them?
We collectively as a country.
Governments, businesses?
Well, and markets. Because there are, through offset and what are called inset models, there are a lot of companies and a lot of investors that want to reward farmers for doing that. So, and this is already underway in Alberta, in Manitoba. There's interesting work being done by big companies like McCain's. So they're working with potato farmers, so you can get net zero French fries, or with Nutrien, big fertilizer producer, to reward farmers to change their practices through things like tillage, going to no-till, for instance, so that they capture more of those greenhouse gases in their soil and get compensated for it. We're estimating in our RBC research that there's probably between $2 to $4 billion a year available in the market to invest in farmers. So that comes from the market, comes from companies and investors that are looking for, as I say, offsets to transfer that to farmers to care for their land more smartly, use new technologies, but have that capital, that money in the bank to pay for those tools and to follow those practices.
Let's talk disruption. One man-made, one not so much. Let's start with man-made. Ukraine. What has that done to everything we've been talking about here?
Huge spike, as we all know, in commodity prices, food particularly. That has started to moderate, and we believe will continue to moderate through 2023. Inflation will come down, including for food, but we are going to see more disruptions like this. The free flow of goods and food stuffs in the world is not going to be as smooth over the next 25 years, frankly, as it was over the last 25 years. This is all part of deglobalization or reglobalization, depending on your point of view. So game on for Canada as a major producer, number one, number two, number three producer in a whole range of food products. There's going to be more demand for what we produce. I got to meet with a Japanese business delegation last fall that had come to Canada to say, here's what we need over the next 25 years. Amazing how the Japanese think. Right? They said, here's our shopping list. This is how much canola we're going to need over the next 25 years. We really like Canada as a canola producer. You make great canola, you're reliable, we like you as a country. We're not so sure how reliable you are as a trading partner. Your ports are a bit messy. Your roads, your rail lines are not as sophisticated as we'd like to see. So we want to hear about your plans for the next 10, 25 years in terms of infrastructure.
And do we have any?
So that we can count on you as a 25-year shopper for canola, for pork. They want a lot of Canadian pork as well. No, we don't. And this is a chronic Canadian challenge. We have lots of good policies in place. We have good investments in place, but nowhere near as ambitious and as focused as we need to be to say to the world, but also to ourselves, here's what our infrastructure plan is for the next 25 years. And you know what, this time we're going to stick to it, because we're also seen in the world as not always reliable. We'll say we're going to build this, and as we all know, sometimes usually takes longer in Canada than we say it will. The world knows that. We've got to up our game in terms of hitting our commitments.
We know about that all too well in this neighborhood, because 100 yards north of us right now is an LRT that should have been opened by now and is going to be billions over budget by the time it's done, if it's ever done. Anyway, I'm on a tangent. The other disruptive thing I wanted to talk about was weather-related events. We're seeing what's happening in California right now. Quite frightening what's going on. How much more of this is a part of the story you're talking about?
This is the new normal, and in fact, the Japanese reference that as well. Climate resilient infrastructure is a growing concern. So they see what happened with the floods in BC last year, and how that disrupted trade. And they say, you know, we're not sure we can rely entirely on a single producer, because if you are hit by a climate event, by a weather event, and that means a shipment of canola is not going to get to us, that's going to cause havoc in our market. So give us a bit more certainty that you're not only going to invest in infrastructure, but you're going to have what's called climate resilient infrastructure. This is a new challenge for Canada, but one that we know is here, and it is going to grow. So when we're building, and it's true for LRTs as well, but when we're building rail lines, which we're not building sufficiently, or expanding our ports, it's not going to be the port of yesteryear that we're going to need. The port of the future is going to be digitally enabled, but it's also got to be climate resilient, because it is going to be hit by hurricanes, by weather disruptions. Farmers are also getting used to this, and no farmer needs to be told about how challenging and unpredictable weather is. They know that before the rest of us do, but that also is a new norm for farmers. It is going to be harder to predict what the weather is going to be like next year or the year after, and therefore harder to manage your crops through this. Comes back to those economic incentives. So how do we continue to reward farmers for what are called climate smart practices, so they are being rewarded not only for what they're producing, but also for what they're preserving?
How does that look? Is that a tax code change or what?
Well, no, it's an offset and inset model, so that companies and investors...
Beyond that, you've talked about that,
yeah.
But beyond that, is there something the rest of us can be doing to incent this better behavior?
Well, if you're an investor, look for ways to invest in this. But if you're a consumer, which we all are, think about what you're consuming food-wise. Think about where your food is coming from. Spend a bit of time. Spend a minute understanding, whether it's a QR code or looking at what's on labels. Where did your food come from? Is it climate smart? increasingly you will know the emissions of your food. So when you get a box of cereal or a dozen eggs, you'll be able to see on the label what the footprint is. And as climate smart consumers, then we'll all be able to collectively let the market do what it does very well, which is send signals to the producers that they will be rewarded for those climate smart practices.
That sounds like a worthy and valuable thing to do. Is it a luxury people will want to consider when inflation's at 5, 6, 7%?
Yeah, that's a pressing question. Let's not be naive. People are pressed in the pocketbook, and when they are pressed, they tend to think primarily and exclusively often about the economic consideration, the price of something. That sustainability is a nice to have or a luxury, as you say. But sustainability also needs to drive innovation, drive those technologies that we talked about that is actually going to reduce the prices. Those robotic milkers on dairy farms that I mentioned, those can drive down the price of milk. Technologies in fertilizer, we need to reduce the amount of emissions that come from fertilizer. Fertilizer companies are working on this. Every farmer knows that they pay far too much on, or spend too much on fertilizer. They'd all like to cut their fertilizer bill. Well, these technologies, these innovations that Canadian companies can lead are going to reduce the amount of money that farmers need to spend on those inputs. That will lead to lower prices for consumers.
Okay, in our last few minutes here, you've done this report, you've done a lot of research, you've put some ideas out there. Where do you want to see it go now?
We need Canadians and Canadian governments to see agriculture as a critical strategic opportunity for the country. We're calling this Canada's moonshot. How does Canada produce 25% more food this decade with 25 to 30% fewer emissions? We have the technology. We have the brainpower out there to do it. We need the federal and provincial governments to work together a lot more ambitiously than they are. We need the private sector, great innovators right through the food system, to come together to focus on this moonshot that not only is going to be essential to Canada getting to net zero, is actually going to be a great export to the world, because all sorts of countries out there are also trying to figure this out. If we figure it out first, we're going to be selling those technologies, selling that know-how to the world.
Is it a problem, John, that, and I hope I'm not telling tales out of school here, but the agriculture minister in the provincial cabinet, in the federal cabinet, tends not to be one of the more senior ministers in those cabinets. How big a problem is that?
It's a fascinating but very big problem. Agriculture is not seen as economic strategy. And this is something that RBC is trying to stress far and wide. Agriculture is one of, if not the most strategically important sectors in the economy. It creates all sorts of jobs. It's essential to exports. It actually is a thread of national unity that we take for granted, because agriculture is everywhere in the country. So how do we see agriculture and food systems more broadly as an economic opportunity, the way we look at electric vehicles, for instance, the way we look at batteries? We are going to be investing, rightly so, billions of dollars, collectively tens of billions of dollars, in the transition of other sectors like vehicles, like oil and gas. We need to make the same commitment to agriculture, not as some sort of subsidy to farmers, but as a way of reimagining this sector for the next quarter century as an economic leader for the country.
That's John Stackhouse, Senior VP in the Office of the CEO at the Royal Bank of Canada, RBC, I guess they call it now, trying to lead the next green revolution. John, as always, good to have you here at TVO.
Pleasure, Steve. Thank you.
The Earth's history is described using epochs. For instance, the current geological epoch is widely referred to as the Holocene. It began some 11,000 years ago after the Ice Age, but there is a lively debate about whether, in fact, we're in another epoch, one likely begun in the last century. It's called the Anthropocene and meant to mark the permanent impact humans have made on the planet. And a tiny lake in southern Ontario might just become a critical proving ground for those making the case. With us now to explain, in St. Catharines, Ontario, Francine McCarthy. She's a professor of earth sciences at Brock University and a member of the Anthropocene Working Group. Professor McCarthy, it's great to have you on TVO tonight. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. Great to be here.
Pleasure to have you. What is your definition of the Anthropocene?
The Anthropocene has many different definitions depending who you speak to, which was one of the issues that the Anthropocene Working Group decided to tackle in 2012. It originated as a term in the year 2000 when atmospheric chemist Nobel laureate Paul Crutzen got up at a meeting and suddenly said, let's stop saying the word Holocene. Humans have so changed the planet that we're now in the Anthropocene, anthropos meaning human. So in 2012, a group of stratigraphers, geologists who study geologic time and the layers of rock and how they record our Earth history, decided to tackle this problem and decide for everyone, once and for all, everywhere around the world, where there is that line that we can draw on the time scale, and basically bring an end to the Holocene and the beginning of the Anthropocene. So the term then was used very loosely until this group of geologists decided to tackle it. And after some discussion, by 2019, it was decided that the year 1950 or thereabouts should be used. So what I mean, and my fellow Anthropocene Working Group members mean by Anthropocene, is the interval of time since 1950, if we're using Crawford Lake as the example, 1950, when Earth systems radically changed in how they respond to one another because of the change in atmospheric composition due to emissions of primarily greenhouse gases.
Gotcha.
So that's what I mean, and that's what my colleagues mean. And depending on which site gets chosen, if it's Crawford Lake, the year would be 1950. If it's one of the other sites, it could be anywhere, let's say between 1948 and 1955. But the key thing is all of the sites that the Anthropocene Working Group studied, 12 sites in all show a massive response, a massive change to atmospheric change, human-induced atmospheric change, and the way the entire planet responds in the middle of the 20th century. So that's what we mean by Anthropocene.
Okay. You mentioned Crawford Lake. That's one of the sites that's in contention, but it's not the only one. How many sites are folks like you considering at the moment?
So initially there were 12 sites. So there were 12 groups who felt that they had a geological environment that would preserve this signature, the difference between the human-dominated atmosphere, ocean systems, and before then what we're calling the Holocene. It whittled itself down to 9 sites. By the time, after 3 or 4 years of study, 3 of the groups felt that they didn't have quite a strong enough case to make. So doing the additional work, which was getting the papers, published in a special issue of the Journal of Anthropocene, the Anthropocene Review, what we ended up with were 9 very meaty, very, very detailed papers with lots and lots of data, all of which show everywhere from a peat bog in Poland to an ice sheet in Antarctica. All of these sites showed a massive change in the way the Earth behaves, the way the Earth responds to those changes in the atmosphere. So there are 9 sites in contention all in all, and through the process of evaluating these, we're trying to come up, we, the Anthropocene Working Group, are trying to come up with the best candidate to put forward to the commission that is going to decide, should there be an Anthropocene, should there not? And that's not our call. Our work as the Anthropocene Working Group is to put the best possible site forward, and another group will then decide, did we make a strong enough case?
Well, one of the sites that you're pitching is Crawford Lake, which is only about an hour and change from the studio. And I'm going to ask our director, Sheldon Osman, to bring up a map. There it is right there. And zoom in if you would. What makes this site of interest, again, to folks like you?
Well, I've been studying Crawford Lake for decades, and my supervisor was the first. My master's supervisor was the first scientist who really recognized the potential for the annual layers to accumulate in the lake, and that being a perfect, like, tree ring like record of all of the events that happened at Crawford Lake. So the very, very deep lake, it's actually a sinkhole in the Niagara Escarpment, so like a cave whose roof has caved in, a sinkhole. And so it's 23 meters deep, but it's very small, as you pointed out. You can walk around it in 10 minutes on a leisurely stroll. So it's that depth to area and volume ratio that makes the bottom of the lake not in contact with the atmosphere. So it's completely isolated. Its fancy word is called the monomillennium. It's completely isolated. So in a way, it's like the lake that you see if you visit Crawford Lake and walk around the boardwalk. It's a small lake, but hidden underneath that small lake is an even smaller, very, very deep lake that is not mixing with the rest of the environment. And that means that the layers don't get mixed up, they don't get churned up. And so everything that falls through the water column accumulates and doesn't get messed up, so that you have these perfect, they're actually seasonal. There's the summer layer and the rest of the year. So we have a two-part annual couplet, if you will, that every year marks what's accumulated. And that includes everything from the anthropogenic impact, the gases, the particles, the atmospheric pollution, as well as pollen, natural things that would naturally be there.
We've got some footage of your team at work. So Sheldon, if you would, let's roll some of that.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
All right. Oh, that's great. Oh man, this is very good.
Yeah.
Oh, now it makes sense.
For what the Stratigraphic Commission has suggested as the base of the proposed Anthropocene Epoch is 1950 because of the bomb spike, and I am quite sure, based on previous work that I've done on other cores, that 1950 is right around here. And because I think this very thick white line that I was interested in, I think it was 1945, and so that would be the base of the proposed Anthropocene Epoch.
Okay, for those listening on podcast and who couldn't see that, your team is sending these very long, huge posts deep into the core in the hopes of pulling up samples, and you were able to conclude what from the sample that you just looked at?
So because we have these, when we put down a freeze core, we actually freeze the lake bed to that. Basically, there's a slurry of dry ice and ethanol, so that that metal sampler that we put down, it actually freezes the lake bed onto it. So each layer that we see, we can actually go back to the lab and sample it. Like, we can very carefully grab just that one layer, and we can test it, we can process it, analyze it for all sorts of different things. We can look at the chemistry, we can look at the biology, the little fossils, we can look at anything in that layer. And because we can do the exact layer counting like tree rings, we can say that in 1945, such and such was happening. And as it turns out, it was shortly after 1945 that the Earth began receiving fallout from plutonium from all of the atomic weapons testing, and of course the atomic bombs that were detonated in Japan and previously in the Alamogordo Desert. So it is that fallout from the atmosphere of the plutonium everywhere on the planet, because the mushroom clouds got into the upper atmosphere, and everywhere on the planet received this. And so that's the marker, the primary marker for the Anthropocene. Every site that is a candidate for this golden spike has a strong plutonium record. So you would think that 1945, we would say, well, there it is, we have 3 atomic bombs that we know of. But in fact, it took a little bit longer for the fallout to fall out. And so it's not 1945 that we get the earliest records. The earliest records we get are around 1947, but they're fairly weak. And it's really during the Cold War when you had all of these various superpowers proving that they had nuclear weapons and detonating them in the Bikini Atoll and so on. That's when we start to see a lot of plutonium. And then by the time that people realized, with the Bay of Pigs and the various near misses that we experienced in the 60s, that there had to be non-proliferation treaties, then above ground nuclear testing was banned. And so we have a peak in plutonium records in 1964. And after that, it declines to pretty much background. So we have an increase that starts shortly after 1945, and then it decreases after 1964. And that pattern of, the rise and then the fall back is the primary marker across all the sites. And we have that at Crawford Lake. Crawford Lake is far from any of the atomic bombs or nuclear weapons that were ever, thrown into the upper atmosphere, but it still captures that signal. And so the plutonium is our chronological marker. It's what tells us the time. It says, okay, this is, shortly after the Second World War through the Cold War, that is what you see, the big plutonium record. But there are other things also, the things that really change the atmospheric composition. So the atomic bombs did not alter in large part the atmospheric composition. What did is the emissions of fossil fuels into the atmosphere and changing the effectiveness, the strength of the greenhouse effect, altering our temperature, making the extremes much bigger, the extremes that we have all been experiencing in terms of natural disasters that we're all very much aware of. The changes in those atmospheric compositions get incorporated into the oceans. They change the pH of the oceans. They have all sorts of secondary consequences that most people don't realize. That most people know about the climate change, but all of the other aspects of that atmospheric change are recorded in the sediments of Crawford Lake as they are at the other sites that that various groups have been studying. And that's more important to us as a record of how different the time since the mid-20th century has been compared to the rest of the time since the ice sheets disappeared from most of the continents. That much bigger change is reflected in things like fly ash particles and the various changes that we can record in the atmospheric composition from the sediments that we study. So the sediments record a record. They record what the atmosphere was like at that time. So as I said, if you look at 1945, 1950, 1960, you can reconstruct what the atmosphere was doing. And as I said, the fact that it impacted all other aspects of the Earth system and that the Earth remembers that, the Earth records it, that's why we stratigraphers, geologists who are studying the Anthropocene, feel that it is so different from anything that went on in the last 10, 12,000 years that it should be a new epoch.
We're down to our last minute here, and I want to ask you a bit of an odd question to finish on, and that is normally when something Canadian is participating in some kind of international competition, for lack of a better word, you know, we're cheering for Canada to win. On the other hand, you know, this is a competition in a way to determine how we've dishonored this planet. Do we want to win this?
I think we want to win it in the sense that we're a pretty neutral, non-scary kind of player, an actor on the world stage. So, you know, people can feel comfortable coming to visit the type section, the place where the golden spike is. They can feel comfortable that it's not a scary looking place. As you referred to it, it's pretty, it's quite pretty. It's attractive. It's non-hostile looking. So I think that would help in a sense to make it something that people can just deal with, not be afraid of it and stop thinking about it and bury their heads in the sand, but think that, yes, it is an issue. We all accept it, and let's move on. Let's deal with the issue as best we can, because ignoring it isn't going to make it go away.
And just quickly, when's the committee going to decide?
We're in the process now of deciding. What needs to happen is that one of those sites has to have a 60% supermajority to move forward. And like in any, it's like a political convention, you know, it depends. It will be decided when one site has that 60% supermajority, and it is impossible to predict. It could be this next round of voting that decides that starts next week, 30-day period. We may know when that's over, or we may not. Who knows how many rounds of voting we'll have to go through. We saw that with the Speaker of the House in the U.S. He took many rounds of voting, so I hope it doesn't go that far. The McCarthy thing, I hope, doesn't come back to haunt me.
I was just going to say, Francine McCarthy, your friend Kevin McCarthy didn't get this done very quickly.
No relation whatsoever.
This may take longer than we think. Anyway, Professor McCarthy, it's awfully good of you to join us here on TVO tonight. You're a professor of earth sciences at Brock University. You've been coming to us from St. Catharines. Thanks so much.
Okay, it's been great. Thanks.
Out-of-control forest fires are frequently in the news, but not all fires are created equally. Wildfire season can lead to a phenomenon known as zombie fires. Here to explain what that is Jennifer Baltzer, who has been studying the effects of these fires in the Northwest Territories. She is the Canada Research Chair in Forests and Global Change and Associate Professor in the Department of Biology at Wilfrid Laurier University. Welcome to our studios.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so when someone reads zombie fire, when I'm reading zombie fire, I have some images in my head of branches and roots pushing out of the dirt and just climbing, coming for people. That is not exactly what it is. So I'm hoping you can explain what exactly is a zombie fire.
Yeah, so a zombie fire, it's a really interesting fire behavior where a fire starts in one season. So fires start in the summer, it burns through that summer, and smolders in the soil and in the tree roots through the winter. So the fire actually burns underground through the winter and then comes back to life the following spring. So it reignites early in the spring before we have conditions that would normally lead to fire ignition. So before a lot of active lightning starts.
Now, there are some other names for zombie fire as well.
Yeah.
What are those?
So overwintering fires, so that really describes this behavior. They're fires that spend the winter below the snow, in the soil, smoldering away, and also holdover fires. So we have holdover fires that can ignite in the summer and go dormant during the summer and reignite in the summer. So those are also holdover fires. So this is a specific type of holdover fire that actually goes dormant or smolders in the soil through the winter and then comes back to life in the spring.
All right, let's talk a little geography. Where are we seeing these zombie fires and these types of holdover fires?
We're seeing these fires throughout the boreal biome. So what we're seeing happening is when we're having these really large, unprecedented fire years, and we hear about these in the news all the time, record-breaking fire year, these large fire events that can lead to really catastrophic outcomes. These are years where we tend to see a lot of this overwintering fire behavior. So hot, dry summers that lead to long fire seasons that burn into the fall and can lead to this overwintering behavior. And so this can happen throughout the boreal. And so it really is dependent on the fire year. So when you have a location that's having a big fire year, it's very likely that you're going to see this overwintering behavior afterwards. So in 2020 and 2021 in Siberia, we saw a lot of overwintering behavior because these were huge fire years. So yeah, it tends to be associated with these hot, dry wildfire events that can happen throughout the boreal biome.
All right, I'm going to ask you for another definition. Boreal biome. What is that exactly, and where is that?
Yeah, so basically, if you imagine the planet, there's sort of a crown of green around the top of the planet. There's a band of forest. So we here in Ontario, in southern Ontario, we live in the temperate zone. As you move further and further north, you start to transition to forests that are more dominated by evergreen trees, like you can imagine your Christmas tree. So trees that retain their needles all year round. And so then we're shifting into this boreal biome, which is really dominated by evergreen trees. It's characterized by thick peat soils that store about 30 to 40% of the carbon, of the terrestrial carbon on the planet. So it's this amazing ring of forest that's the largest intact forested biome on the planet.
So I want to get an understanding of how does one identify a zombie fire versus a regular forest fire?
Right. So when we think about a regular fire, it's a fire that burns through a single fire season. So a fire season typically goes from about June, when lightning ignitions start to be quite active. This is a typical ignition source in the boreal, to around the end of August or early September, when we start to have shorter days, longer nights, more precipitation, these things that sort of slow the fires down that are on the landscape. So when we identify a zombie fire or an overwintering fire, the way we identify that is these very early spring flare-ups before we start to have ignitions from other sources. So these are fires that started in one summer and then overwintered, and that very early ignition in the spring gives us a clue, and its proximity to the edge of a burn from the previous summer. So this is how we can identify these on the landscape.
How early are we talking about? Are we talking like in March and April?
Typically in May,
okay.
in early to mid-May, we'll see these fires flaring up once the snow has disappeared from the landscape.
All right. I want to ask a little bit about the impact these fires have on forests. We're talking about the boreal biome, large swaths of forest, but what's the true impact of zombie fires on forests?
So I guess the short answer to that is that we don't really know. These have not been, although we've known about overwintering or zombie fires for a long time, they haven't really been a big priority from a management perspective, because they've typically, you'd have them reignite in the spring. Right. They wouldn't tend to spread. And so from a management perspective, they've not received a lot of attention. With climate warming, we're seeing conditions that lead to more of these fires occurring on the landscape, more of these zombie fires occurring on the landscape, and springtime conditions that can support spread of the fire once that reignition happens. So they're becoming more of a concern for forest managers. And so this past summer, my team, myself and my collaborators, we managed to get into some of these zombie fires for the very first time in collaboration with our partners in the government of the Northwest Territories, to start to collect data to evaluate the impacts of these fires on forest ecosystems. There are some things that we can expect. So because these fires start in one summer, burn, smolder in the soil through the winter, and then reignite the following spring, we expect to see greater carbon losses. So again, these soils in the boreal hold tremendous carbon stocks. And when you have fires that burn through, particularly smoldering fires in the soils, a lot of carbon is released.
You talked about the Northwest Territories.
Yes.
I'm curious about why specifically that area.
So my home university has a partnership with the government of the Northwest Territories. And so we work really closely with the government in the Northwest Territories. For the zombie fire research, 2014 was a really, from a Canadian perspective, was a really massive fire year. In the Northwest Territories alone, we saw about 2.9 million hectares of forested land burning. And so those are the kinds of conditions that lead to a lot of zombie fires. And indeed, this is what this was detected. We were able to pick up on a large number of zombie fires that happened in conjunction with these large fire complexes from 2014.
All right, you talked about sort of, I know in 2014, where you guys were set up in base, and I sort of asked about the impacts of forest fires. What's the impact of these fires in terms of surrounding communities as well?
Yeah, so a big fire season like 2014 has a huge impact on the communities in the north. So in 2014, a lot of the fires were really close to communities, and so the smoke from those fires had a huge impact. I was living up there with my family at that point, and there were many days where we couldn't take the kids outside to play. The air quality was so bad. And many Canadians, particularly in Western Canada, have experienced those kinds of really just overwhelming smoky conditions that make it hard to do anything outside. And so that's one immediate impact. In 2014, there were also evacuations from communities where fires come too close. So when we have really close linkages between kind of what we call the urban wildland interface, where you have communities proximal to forests, this is where we can have challenges with fires encroaching on communities and leading to a need to evacuate those communities. The 2014 fire season also led to road closures into Yellowknife. So Yellowknife is the capital of the Northwest Territories, and the roads in and out of the capital city were closed for a couple of weeks at a time, meaning that restocking couldn't happen for food, for example. People couldn't get in and out. People would be stuck on one side of the highway closure. And this often happens with big wildfires as well. These fires jump the highways. They cause conditions that are too smoky to drive through. You can think of a really thick pea soup fog day, and the smoke can be thicker than that, right? So driving conditions can be quite dangerous.
With that being said, not all fires are bad fires. And what I want you to hopefully explain is, many people may not realize that, but forest fires are actually important for our ecosystem. How come?
So the boreal forest has been shaped by fire. Fire is a critical part of that landscape. Fires burn through, so where I work, fires burn through every 80 to 100 years. These are really essential for the renewal of the forest. So fires burn through, they kill the older trees in the stand, they allow for regeneration, they open up the understory, allowing the shrubs and the herbs in the understory to really be quite productive. It changes the age structure and the stand structure at the landscape. So having that sort of heterogeneity or that variability in forest age and forest structure is really important for various wildlife species. Different species of wildlife use different ages of forests, and so having that complexity at the landscape scale is really essential. And so these fires are really an important part of the boreal forest, and indeed many plant species have quite amazing adaptations to allow them to thrive in the face of fire and replace themselves after fires. So even though we often think of fires as being, a very damaging agent, in these fire-adapted ecosystems, it's really quite essential that fires burn through.
All right, I want to get into some of your field work, because I know that's where you love to be. You provided us with some pictures. Let's get our first picture up. So looking at this photo, what are we looking at?
We are looking at, so the zombie fires that we were able to visit in the Northwest Territories last summer, all of them were very remote locations, so we had to access all of them by helicopter. And so what we're looking at is a picture that I took from the helicopter as we were flying over a site that had experienced a zombie fire. And what we're seeing is all of these large trees, and so those trees would be about 30-centimeter diameter at breast height.
Okay.
And so those are all trees that are completely flattened. So all of the trees have fallen over in this particular picture. And this was a common feature of these sites. When we would fly in, we would be able to see them from a distance because they were we had all of the remote sensing data with us in the helicopters. And so we were able to identify where in the landscape we were looking for these locations. And every time we'd fly up to one of them, we'd see that kind of situation where the trees were all down. And when we got onto the ground, we could see charring on the underside of the stems as well, which suggests that those trees either fell down during the first fire event or as the fires were smoldering over winter and fell, and then fire burned through that particular site again the following spring.
All right, we have a second photo, and it's quite beautiful actually, but this to you, a fire has been here because we're looking at fireweed, correct?
Yeah, so fireweed is an early, it's a really beautiful early successional species that comes in really quickly in the first year after fire. In this particular picture, it's again a picture of many, many stems kind of layered on top of each other. So this was a really typical way for these sites to look, having all of the stems down on the ground, having lots of tall fireweed growing up around them. So this was a really common, we could see this from the air as well. Many of our sites, you could see the stems down, you could see all of this tall fireweed, which was very, was unusual compared to the single season fires.
Do you have an idea of when that fire took place?
Yeah, so that fire, both of those pictures were fires that started in 2014 and reignited in 2015.
All right. We have one last photo, and I think I get an idea of what you were talking about, sort of showing that you're sort of looking at the charring from under. Is that what we're looking at here?
Yeah, so in that picture, I am reaching into the stem of a tree. And so what we found, this was actually probably the biggest surprise from the field work. We were expecting to go into these stands and have most of them be peatland forests, right. So forested peatlands, where you have thick peat soils and kind of, a lot of people refer to these forests as muskeg, sort of small black spruce, thick peat soils, boggy conditions. In fact, when we got into many of these sites, we found that they were fairly productive, drier, kind of more upland forests, and that much of the smoldering was being supported by the roots, by combustion of the roots and combustion into the stem. And so in that picture, I'm reaching up into a stem that's been hollowed out by fire as that fire smoldered over the winter in those trees. And so, even just identifying what parts of the landscape these zombie fires happen, we just don't know a lot about this fire behavior. And so being able to identify the landscape positions where these fires are happening was, kind of an exciting piece of the research that we were able to identify right off the bat.
I want to talk about zombie fires closer to home here in this province. As we talked about the boreal biome, a large swath of the north of this province is that. How much of a problem are they here?
Well, so Eastern Canada typically has a longer fire return interval than Western Canada. So Eastern Canada has a wetter climate compared to Western North America. And this is why we see, a forest to forest transition, temperate forest to hemiboreal to boreal compared to the prairie directly into boreal forest in the West. And so the fact that we have wetter conditions here, we haven't seen as much of an increase in fire activity in these kinds of, really massive fire events that we're seeing in Western North America, that we're seeing in Siberia yet. The prediction is that, even Eastern Canada is going to see drying associated with climate warming as we continue on with our warming trajectory. And so we expect to see these, where we have large fire events happening in Eastern Canada, we would expect to see similar behaviors where these overwintering fires could take hold and smolder through the winter. So again, if you've got fires burning late into the fall that promote smoldering really taking hold, those are conditions that can lead to this overwintering fire behavior. And so certainly that, there's lots of opportunity for that to happen here in Eastern North America, where we have lots of boreal forests, also lots of peatlands. If, depending on where you are, that may play an important role.
In terms of the research that you've done in sort of the regions in Canada, are we seeing more zombie fires than ever before, or is this something that it's just so sort of new in terms of coming across this?
No, fire managers have known about this fire behavior for quite a long time, but it hasn't been a big concern because it hasn't, the fires have not tended to spread too much in the spring, so they'd overwinter but not really manage to spread or do too much damage the following spring. I think certainly with the increase, so we're seeing overall across the boreal an increase in burned area. We're seeing more of these kind of very severe fire seasons where we have deeper burning, longer fire seasons. And so because of that, we expect to see kind of a higher frequency of these zombie fires in the landscape. And so being at a point where we're starting to figure out what the implications of that are before they become, potentially become a problem is a really important step forward.
I think here in Ontario specifically, when we've had record years of fires, we worry about what the next year is going to be. And correct me if I'm wrong, here in this province, we've done a pretty good job of managing our fires. Is there an issue at all with over-management of forest fires?
Yeah, so I think it's become pretty clear. We are very effective across Canada, across North America at managing fires and suppressing fires. And I think we have come to realize that when you are too good at suppressing fires, this can lead to problems where you build up too much fuel on the landscape, and then when a fire does burn through, it becomes a much more serious event than if the regular fire season had been able to be to happen.
What do you do in that case? What is if there are fires and is the management process need to be looked at differently in terms of how we do that?
Well, so different parts of Canada manage fires quite differently, and it really depends on in the Northwest Territories where I work, there is a let it burn policy. So they monitor fires, but they don't action them until they start to come close to communities or other assets of value. And so, there's the component of protecting important assets on the landscape, protecting human life and human property. Those are all key components of forest management decisions. And so then, where you do have to manage fires on the landscape, I think there's an important role to play for forest management to reduce those fuel loads so then you don't have those catastrophic fires burning through. So certainly we're always going to have to manage fires because we have a lot of people, at these fire, urban wildland interfaces. And, so making sure that your property is, fire smarted, and when we do have to manage for fire, that we are actually helping to reduce those fuel loads. Those are the kinds of directions that I think people are looking toward. There's also in some places reintroduction of prescribed fires, which can happen in times where we know we can control those fires, and so that's another way that people are looking at. Reintroducing fire in a safe way into places that maybe have had a lot of fire suppression.
Very important work. I got to say, very fascinating work as well. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And that is the agenda for Thursday, January 12, 2023. Tomorrow, J.N. Jagannathan gets perspective on this week's summit among the leaders of Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Also, the latest from Brazil and the political unrest fomented by supporters of former President Jair Bolsonaro. I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org, and J.N. will see you again here tomorrow.